It was a quiet evening in a peaceful suburban neighborhood. The sun had just set, and the warm orange glow of streetlights stretched across the neatly lined houses. Inside one of those homes, a black veteran was finishing some paperwork at the kitchen table. His uniformed days in the military were behind him, but his habits had not faded. He had the same precision in everything he did, from organizing his bills to making sure the house was secure. His wife was out on a quick run to grab groceries. He could hear the hum of her car pulling into the driveway, and he glanced at the clock, noting it was later than usual. Suddenly, the calm of the evening shattered. The sound of tires screeching and heavy boots on the pavement cut through the quiet. A group of people in tactical gear appeared in his front yard. Their uniforms were black, heavily padded, and their faces hidden behind helmets and shields. He could hear the click of a taser being prepared and the tense voices of officers shouting commands. Confused and alarmed, he ran to the front door, only to see his wife being cornered by the SWAT team. She was carrying her grocery bags, one hand raised instinctively, trying to explain herself. The officers ignored her words, and without warning, one of them pressed the taser against her side. Sparks flew and she cried out in pain. She fell to the ground, gripping her side, her grocery bags scattering across the driveway. The veteran's heart pounded in his chest. He froze for a moment, trying to understand what was happening. "Why are you doing this?" he shouted, pushing past the front door. The officers barely registered his presence. They were focused entirely on his wife. The man who had once commanded troops in high-stress situations felt a rush of anger and disbelief. He had trained for moments like this in the field, but this was his home, his family. It was personal. Neighbors began to peek out of their windows, whispering to each other, unsure if they should intervene. Some took out their phones, recording the scene. Sensing that what they were witnessing was wrong, the veteran moved closer, careful not to escalate the situation further. His military training kicked in immediately. He knew he needed to stay calm, to assess the situation, and to protect his family without giving them any excuse to turn their aggression on him. "Step back," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the rage he felt inside. "You have no right to treat her like this." One officer turned toward him, waving him off aggressively, but the veteran did not retreat. His eyes locked on the taser-wielding officer, and he could see the momentary flicker of hesitation in their stance. They knew he was not just any man. They could see the authority in his posture, the confidence in his calm tone. He had served his country, he knew his rights, and he was not about to let fear dictate his actions. He moved closer to his wife, kneeling beside her to check for injuries. She was shaking not just from the pain of the taser but from shock. Her eyes were wide, filled with confusion and fear. "I'm okay," she whispered, though her voice was shaky. "I didn't do anything." He placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I know," he said softly. "I'm right here. We're going to handle this." At that moment, the veteran realized the depth of what they were facing. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a normal law enforcement encounter. He could feel it in the way the officers had targeted his wife, the unnecessary aggression and the complete disregard for her safety. They had chosen her because of who she was and because of the color of her skin. His anger flared, but he controlled it, knowing that any rash move could make the situation worse. The veteran stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. He began speaking to the SWAT team with a controlled voice that carried both authority and calm. "You are in my home. You have no warrant for this. Step back and identify yourselves properly." For a moment there was silence. The officers glanced at each other, uncertain how to proceed. They were trained for high-pressure situations, but they were not prepared for the presence of a man who exuded both courage and discipline. The veteran kept his focus on his wife, making sure she remained steady and safe. He glanced around and saw neighbors gathering, some cautiously approaching the edge of the lawn. Their presence gave him a sense of reassurance. Even in this tense moment, he realized that the truth would come out. Someone was recording, someone would witness the injustice, and the SWAT team could not act with complete impunity in front of multiple witnesses. "Listen carefully," he said to the officers, his voice rising slightly. "I am a veteran. I have served my country honorably. You will not harm my family in my own home. If you continue this, I will take action through the proper channels and you will answer for your conduct." One officer, frustrated, barked an order, but the veteran's calm defiance was like a shield. He was no longer just a husband protecting his wife. He was a trained leader, ready to ensure that justice would be on his side. He took a deep breath and called the precinct from his phone, keeping his voice steady, explaining exactly what had happened. The words were precise, detailing the taser attack on his wife, the lack of cause, and the apparent racial bias in the officer's behavior. While he spoke, he kept an eye on his wife, making sure she was not being touched again. He spoke with clarity and authority, leaving no room for misunderstanding. The SWAT team, realizing that their actions were being documented and reported, began to hesitate. They could see that this was no ordinary encounter, that the man in front of them was not intimidated, and that the situation was rapidly escalating beyond their control. His wife, though in pain, found strength in his presence. She held his hand tightly, drawing courage from his calm and resolute demeanor. She could see that he was not just reacting emotionally. He was planning, assessing, and preparing for the next steps. She whispered quietly, "I'm scared," but he gently reassured her, "I've got you. We'll handle this together." The veteran then looked toward the street, spotting the neighbors capturing videos and taking notes. He realized that in this moment he was not alone. The community could witness the injustice and there would be accountability. The officers were beginning to understand that their actions were no longer private, that their aggression could be challenged, and that the truth would come to light. He continued to speak firmly, instructing the SWAT team to leave his property. He made it clear that any further aggression would be met with legal action and public reporting. His voice was steady, and the officers, unsure of how to respond, slowly began to pull back. One of them muttered something under their breath, clearly frustrated, but they did not advance. As the tension slowly eased, the veteran knelt beside his wife, checking her for injuries again. She was trembling, but her eyes showed relief. He helped her to her feet, supporting her as they moved inside. The front door closed behind them, creating a small barrier between their home and the chaos outside. Once inside, he quickly tended to her, ensuring she was safe and that she understood the severity of what had just occurred. "This was not your fault," he said gently. "We are going to make sure they are held accountable." The rest of the evening passed in a quiet but tense atmosphere. The veteran remained alert, knowing that the officers could still attempt to intimidate them. He gathered all evidence available: the scattered grocery bags, the taser marks, witness statements from neighbors, and recordings from the phones. Every detail was noted meticulously. He had learned long ago in the military that preparation and documentation could make the difference between justice and injustice. By the end of the night, the veteran felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. His wife rested nearby, still shaken but safe, and he began to plan the next steps. This incident was more than an attack on his wife. It was an attack on their dignity, their safety, and their rights. He knew that the path ahead would require persistence, courage, and strategy, but he was ready. As he looked out the window at the darkened street, he made a silent vow. Those officers had underestimated him. They had underestimated his training, his discipline, and his unwavering commitment to his family. They would regret the moment they chose to harass his wife, and he would see to it that justice was done. In that quiet house, amidst the scattered groceries and lingering tension, the veteran understood something deeply. Courage was not just about facing danger in a battlefield. It was about standing firm in the face of injustice, protecting loved ones, and ensuring that the truth could never be silenced. And in that moment, he was more determined than ever to make sure his family was safe, and that those who tried to harm them would face the consequences. After the chaos of the evening, the veteran and his wife sat in their living room, still shaken but safe inside their home. The adrenaline from the taser attack had faded slightly, leaving a heavy mix of anger and disbelief. He kept glancing at his wife, who was still trembling from the pain and shock. She tried to put on a brave face, but he could see it in her eyes. She was scared, and she had every right to be. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. He knew that right now, panic or anger could make the situation worse. The SWAT team had overstepped, and the next steps required careful thinking. He needed to act, but he needed to act wisely. "We are going to make sure this is handled the right way," he said softly to his wife. "No one will get away with this." He started by gathering the scattered evidence from the driveway. The grocery bags had been torn and their contents spilled, but the items themselves told a story. The taser marks on his wife's arm were faintly visible, and he carefully took photos to document them. His wife watched him, amazed at his focus, even in the middle of such a stressful situation. "You always know what to do," she said quietly. He gave her a small nod, but his mind was already working on the bigger picture. The veteran picked up his phone and began making calls. He first contacted a trusted friend from his military days, someone who had also served overseas and understood the importance of strategy and composure. "They attacked my wife," he said, his voice calm but firm. It was unprovoked. "I need guidance on the next steps. We are documenting everything, and I won't let this go unanswered." His friend listened carefully and agreed to help, providing advice on how to preserve evidence and approach the situation legally and strategically. Next, he reached out to neighbors who had witnessed the event. Many of them had been filming from their windows or front yards. Some had captured video footage of the Taser incident and the officer's behavior. He asked them to save everything and assured them that their testimony would be critical. Neighbors began to rally, sharing their recordings and notes. The veteran realized the importance of community support. Even though this had happened to his family, the presence of witnesses meant the officer's misconduct could not be hidden. While he coordinated with friends and neighbors, he also contacted a local lawyer who specialized in civil rights cases. He explained the situation calmly, describing every detail of the Taser attack and the officer's actions. The lawyer was immediately concerned and advised filing formal complaints against the SWAT team while preserving all evidence. The veteran took notes carefully, already planning the steps he would take the next day. As the night wore on, the veteran and his wife discussed what had happened. They spoke quietly, recounting the moments in the driveway, the sudden appearance of the SWAT team, the Taser, the fear, and the anger. Talking helped them process the event. His wife admitted she had felt completely powerless, but seeing him remain calm and focused had given her strength. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said. He smiled faintly and held her hand. "We face this together," he said. "No one will make us feel small or scared in our own home." The veteran also began drafting a written account of the incident. Every detail mattered: the time, the number of officers, the words they said, the exact sequence of actions. He wrote it in simple, clear language, making sure nothing was exaggerated or omitted. This record would be crucial in proving what had happened. He knew that clarity and accuracy were powerful tools against injustice. The following morning, he was up early. His mind had not rested overnight. He reviewed the footage from neighbors, spoke again with his lawyer, and began preparing to formally report the incident. The SWAT team had acted with aggression and bias, and he was determined that they would face consequences. Every step he took was calculated, making sure that when he confronted the authorities, he would be ready. When he called the precinct, he remained calm but firm. He explained the Taser incident again, this time providing the evidence he had gathered. Photos, videos, witness accounts, all of it was ready. The officers on the line seemed hesitant, and he could sense that they were trying to brush it off. But he pressed on, making it clear that he knew his rights and that he would not accept anything less than accountability. While speaking with law enforcement, he also kept an eye on his family. His wife was trying to resume her normal routine, but the fear lingered. His children were confused and upset, sensing the tension and anger in the house. He reassured them gently, explaining that their home was safe and that he was taking care of everything. He wanted them to feel secure, even while he navigated the complicated and unjust system they were now forced to face. Over the next few days, the veteran continued to organize support. Friends from his military unit reached out, some offering guidance on dealing with law enforcement, others ready to testify about his character and leadership. Community leaders became involved, showing that the family was not alone. The veteran realized that the situation was bigger than just one incident. It was about accountability, about ensuring that no one could harass his family and escape consequences. He also spoke with the media cautiously. A local journalist reached out, having heard of the Taser incident through neighbors' videos. The veteran agreed to an interview, but he spoke carefully, focusing on the facts and the injustice, not personal anger. He emphasized the importance of truth and accountability, explaining how the officer's actions were unprovoked and racially biased. His calm, clear explanation earned respect and drew public attention, which added pressure on the authorities to act responsibly. At home, he continued to support his wife. The physical pain from the taser had started to fade, but the emotional trauma remained. He helped her process the fear, reminding her that she was strong and that they were in control of the next steps. He made sure she knew that her voice mattered, and that their fight was not just about punishment for the officers, but about ensuring safety and justice for their family and community. During this time, he also made plans to document the SWAT team's training and procedures, understanding that showing a pattern of misconduct would strengthen his case. He spoke with experts who could help explain the excessive use of force and the racial bias evident in their behavior. His approach was strategic, methodical, and grounded in his experience as a military leader. As the week progressed, tension grew. The SWAT team knew their actions were being scrutinized. The veteran could sense the unease when he passed the precinct to run errands, but he did not allow intimidation to influence him. He continued his daily life, his work, and his family responsibilities, all while keeping a steady focus on holding the officers accountable. His presence, calm and resolute, sent a clear message. He would not be intimidated and he would see justice done. Neighbors continued to offer support. Some brought meals, others shared information about similar incidents they had witnessed. The veteran was grateful, but he remained focused on the main goal: justice. He maintained detailed logs, ensuring that every call, every meeting, and every piece of evidence was documented. He knew that in situations like this, details mattered more than emotion. By the end of the week, a clearer plan had formed. The veteran would file formal complaints, present the collected evidence, involve legal experts, and ensure the public knew what had happened. The SWAT team had acted with aggression and racial bias, and he was determined to make sure their actions had consequences. But he also knew that the path to justice required patience, discipline, and strategy, all qualities he had developed over years of military service. Through it all, his wife remained by his side. Her strength, though shaken, was remarkable. She had endured an unprovoked attack, yet she found comfort and courage in his calm leadership. Together, they faced the challenge ahead, united and determined. Their children, sensing the growing strength in their parents, began to feel safer, understanding that their family was protected not just by rules or law, but by love, courage, and unwavering resolve. The veteran also reflected on the meaning of service. He had spent years protecting others, putting himself in harm's way for strangers. Now that same training and discipline were being applied to protect his own family. He realized that courage did not always require weapons or battles. Sometimes it required clarity of mind, careful planning, and an unshakable commitment to justice. As the sun set on another day, he reviewed his notes, evidence, and communications. The SWAT team had underestimated him, just as they had underestimated his wife's dignity and resolve. They had acted with aggression, but they had not counted on his focus, his strategy, or his unwillingness to let fear dictate his actions. He knew the next steps would be challenging, but he was ready. In the quiet of the evening, he and his wife sat together, hand in hand. They had faced injustice head-on and survived. The veteran knew that what lay ahead would require persistence and courage, but he felt confident. He had the skills, the support, and the determination to ensure that those who had attacked his family would face the consequences. And in that moment, a sense of calm determination filled the room. The veteran understood that the fight was just beginning, but he also knew this: he would not be intimidated. He would not back down, and he would make sure that justice was done. No. The veteran woke early the next day with a sense of purpose. The taser attack on his wife had shaken his family, but he was not shaken. He had spent years preparing for situations where every decision mattered, where discipline and focus could make the difference between survival and chaos. Today, that preparation would be put to work in a different kind of battle, one for justice, accountability, and protection of his family. The first step was to ensure that his wife and children felt safe. They had been through a terrifying ordeal, and he knew the fear could linger longer than the physical pain. He checked the house carefully, securing doors and windows, and set up cameras in common areas. These were not measures born from paranoia. They were a plan to ensure that if the officers or anyone else tried to intimidate or harm them again, there would be clear evidence. Once he knew his family was secure, he began contacting his network. He reached out to friends from his military days, people who had served alongside him in high-pressure missions and understood the importance of strategy and coordination. They offered advice, support, and practical suggestions on handling law enforcement misconduct. One friend suggested documenting every interaction, creating detailed timelines, and ensuring that evidence was backed up in multiple ways. The veteran listened carefully and took notes, knowing that meticulous preparation would make the difference. He also contacted community leaders he trusted. He explained what had happened, calmly recounting the taser attack and the harassment his wife had faced. These leaders offered support and promised to raise awareness, ensuring that the story would not be ignored. They encouraged him to involve civil rights advocates and local media, emphasizing that public attention would add pressure on the authorities to act responsibly. The veteran appreciated the advice but remained deliberate. He knew that while public attention was important, it needed to be managed carefully to avoid inflaming the situation or giving the officers an excuse to escalate. Throughout the morning, the veteran coordinated with neighbors who had witnessed the taser incident. Several had recorded video footage and taken notes. He collected these materials, ensuring that nothing could be lost or deleted. Each recording added clarity to the story, showing exactly what had happened and confirming that the officer's behavior had been unprovoked and excessive. He reviewed the footage with his lawyer, who confirmed that this would form a strong foundation for a formal complaint. By mid-morning, the veteran had compiled a detailed plan. He would file official complaints, submit the evidence, and make sure that the story reached the appropriate authorities and the public in a controlled, factual manner. He would remain calm and composed in every interaction, showing that his actions were guided by discipline and clarity, not anger or fear. Later that day, he spoke with the lawyer again, going over every detail of the incident. They discussed the taser attack, the officer's aggressive behavior, and the apparent racial bias. The lawyer emphasized the importance of presenting a clear, factual account without exaggeration. The veteran agreed, knowing that credibility and precision were his greatest tools in seeking justice. They also discussed potential next steps, including filing civil complaints, demanding internal investigations, and ensuring that the officers could not evade accountability. The veteran then focused on the family. He spent time with his wife and children, helping them process what had happened. His wife was still shaken, but seeing his calm determination reassured her. He explained that their actions were not just about punishment for the officers, but about protecting themselves and making sure that such behavior could not continue unchecked. His children listened, sensing both the seriousness of the situation and the strength of their father's resolve. As the day progressed, the veteran reached out to a few trusted media contacts. He wanted to ensure that the story could be told accurately, without sensationalism. He explained the events clearly and calmly, emphasizing the injustice, the harassment, and the racial bias. The journalists listened carefully, impressed by his clarity and calmness. They promised to report the story responsibly, highlighting both the incident and the veteran's methodical approach to seeking justice. Meanwhile, news of the incident began to spread in the neighborhood. More neighbors came forward, offering statements and support. Some recounted similar encounters with law enforcement, while others simply expressed outrage at what had happened. The veteran welcomed their support, but he remained focused on the task at hand. He understood that emotion alone could not secure justice. Careful planning, evidence, and strategic action were essential. By evening, the veteran had also begun to explore additional legal avenues. He contacted civil rights organizations and advocacy groups, explaining the situation and the need for accountability. They offered guidance on how to approach the SWAT team's superiors, how to escalate complaints if necessary, and how to ensure that public attention remained focused on the facts. Each conversation reinforced the veteran's belief that they were not alone, and that the officer's actions could not go unchecked. Throughout the day, the veteran maintained a careful balance between action and calm. He checked on his wife frequently, ensuring she was comfortable and supported. He helped with meals, talked to his children, and reassured them that their home was safe. His ability to manage both the emotional and practical aspects of the situation impressed even his closest friends. They knew that he was not just reacting to fear or anger. He was orchestrating a comprehensive plan to secure justice and protect his family. As the week continued, the veteran filed formal complaints with the precinct and higher authorities. He submitted all the evidence, from photos and videos to witness statements and medical documentation of his wife's injuries. He demanded that the officers involved be investigated thoroughly and that disciplinary action be taken. He made it clear that any attempt to downplay or ignore the incident would be met with further legal action and public accountability. The SWAT team, realizing that their actions were now under scrutiny, began to feel the pressure. Rumors circulated that higher authorities were reviewing the case and that internal investigations were underway. The veteran remained calm, knowing that the officer's unease was a sign that his strategy was working. By staying composed, documenting everything, and leveraging support from the community, he was turning the tables on those who had tried to intimidate his family. At home, the veteran also focused on rebuilding a sense of normalcy for his family. He encouraged his wife to resume her routine slowly, offering reassurance and support. He spent time with his children, helping them with homework, talking about their feelings, and ensuring they knew that their home was safe. Even in the midst of a serious battle for justice, he understood the importance of emotional stability and family cohesion. He also continued to review the evidence. Each video, each statement, and each photograph was cataloged carefully. He created timelines, cross-referenced witness accounts, and made notes of every interaction with law enforcement and legal contacts. His methodical approach ensured that nothing could be overlooked and that when the time came, he would have an airtight case. The veteran's calm and strategic actions did not go unnoticed. Friends, neighbors, and even some media contacts commented on his composure under pressure. People admired how he had turned a traumatic and potentially dangerous situation into a carefully managed plan for justice. His actions were a reminder that courage was not just about fighting physically. It was about discipline, focus, and the willingness to stand firm in the face of injustice. One evening, as he sat with his wife and children after dinner, he reflected on the week's events. The initial shock and fear had transformed into a sense of purpose. He realized that their fight was bigger than just one family or one incident. It was about standing against abuse of power, ensuring accountability, and showing that injustice could be challenged with courage, clarity, and strategy. Even as the veteran prepared for the next steps, further legal action, community engagement, and ongoing monitoring of the officers involved, he never lost sight of what was most important: his family. He understood that the fight for justice would be long and challenging, but with preparation, evidence, and unwavering resolve, he was confident that they would prevail. The week ended with the veteran reviewing everything one last time before bed. The complaints had been filed, evidence secured, and support from friends, neighbors, and community leaders was strong. The SWAT team's actions were now under serious review, and the public was beginning to take notice. For the first time since the Taser incident, he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He knew that the officers would not escape accountability, and that his family's dignity and safety were being defended effectively. As he looked at his sleeping children and the woman he loved, the veteran felt a sense of resolve stronger than ever. The Taser attack had been a shock, but it had also awakened a determination to ensure that justice was served. He understood that courage was not just about physical strength, but about clarity of mind, careful planning, and unwavering commitment to what was right. In the days that followed, the veteran would continue to monitor the situation, engage with legal contacts, and prepare for any challenges. The veteran woke early with a renewed sense of purpose. The past week had been a whirlwind of emotion, documentation, and careful planning. Every conversation, every phone call, every piece of evidence he had gathered brought him closer to holding the SWAT team accountable. But today he needed to take decisive action. No longer was it enough to just gather proof. He had to use it strategically to ensure justice. He began the morning by reviewing the evidence once more. Photos of the Taser marks on his wife's arm, videos captured by neighbors, witness statements, and written notes. All of it was carefully cataloged. He cross-checked each detail, making sure nothing was missing. His military training kicked in automatically. He thought of this as a mission, one with high stakes where planning and precision would determine the outcome. He knew that patience and strategy were just as important as courage and strength. After reviewing the materials, he made a series of calls to ensure that the next steps were coordinated. He contacted the lawyer handling the case, who confirmed that the evidence was strong and suggested submitting it to multiple authorities simultaneously. This included the local police oversight committee, the department's internal affairs division, and civil rights organizations. The veteran agreed. He wanted to make sure that the SWAT team could not evade responsibility by delaying or manipulating the process. He also reached out to friends from his military network. They had seen him in stressful situations before and understood the importance of clear communication and strategic planning. They provided advice on how to handle potentially aggressive responses from the SWAT team or the department. Some offered to be present as witnesses at meetings or hearings. Others gave suggestions on managing media interactions, ensuring that the story could be told accurately without inflaming tensions. By late morning, he was ready to begin formally confronting the situation. He drafted emails and letters to the authorities, clearly detailing the taser incident, the officers involved, and the racial bias he had witnessed. Each document was written in precise, calm language, emphasizing facts rather than emotion. The goal was to demonstrate that this was a serious abuse of power, one that required immediate attention. While he worked on the paperwork, his wife and children were nearby. His wife, though still shaken, watched him with admiration. She saw the way he remained composed, how he took control without letting anger dictate his actions. She knew that his determination and strategy were their greatest tools in confronting the injustice they had faced. The children, sensing their father's calm yet unwavering resolve, felt safer than they had since the taser incident. After completing the initial documents, he organized a meeting with the neighbors who had witnessed the attack. They gathered in the living room, quietly sharing their observations. Some had captured video footage, others had recorded audio, and a few had taken notes on the officers' behavior and words. The veteran carefully compiled their contributions into a detailed record. He explained to them why their cooperation was crucial and reassured them that their involvement would help ensure accountability. Everyone understood the importance of honesty, accuracy, and discretion. By early afternoon, he was ready to contact the precinct directly. He requested meetings with internal affairs officers and the SWAT team supervisors. The calls were firm but respectful. He clearly stated that he expected their full attention, that his family's safety had been violated, and that there would be consequences if the officers involved were not properly investigated. He made it clear that he had gathered substantial evidence, had witnesses, and would escalate the situation publicly if necessary. The first meeting took place mid-afternoon. He arrived at the precinct calm and composed, carrying copies of all the evidence. The SWAT supervisors tried to downplay the incident, but he remained steady. He presented each piece of evidence systematically: photos of his wife's injuries, videos of the taser attack, and statements from witnesses. He spoke clearly, pointing out inconsistencies in the officers' explanations and highlighting the racial bias that had been evident during the encounter. The supervisors shifted uncomfortably as he laid out the facts. They had not expected such a meticulous and organized approach. The veteran's calm, disciplined demeanor made it clear that he was not intimidated and that he would not allow the incident to be brushed aside. His precise presentation left little room for excuses. Every claim could be verified, every detail backed by evidence. During the meeting, he also addressed potential future threats. He asked the supervisors what measures would be taken to prevent such aggressive and biased behavior from happening again. He suggested training, accountability checks, and stricter oversight of SWAT operations. His tone was firm but not confrontational. He wanted solutions as well as justice. By the end of the meeting, it was evident that the supervisors had no choice but to take the incident seriously. After returning home, he spent time with his family, helping his wife relax and reassuring the children. Despite the intensity of the day, he knew that their emotional well-being was critical. He explained to his wife that their patience and strategy were already making a difference, and that the officers were beginning to realize they could not act with impunity. The next day, he followed up with internal affairs. The veteran had learned that persistence was as important as preparation. He provided additional documentation, answered questions, and clarified any uncertainties. Each interaction reinforced the strength of his case. The officers involved in the taser attack were now aware that the veteran was fully prepared to pursue every available avenue of accountability. At the same time, he began speaking more publicly about the incident. Carefully chosen media outlets were contacted, and the story was told in a measured way. He emphasized the facts, the injustice, and the need for accountability. His approach drew attention without inflaming tensions. Local journalists praised his composure and clarity, noting that he had managed to transform a terrifying personal experience into a well-documented call for justice. The SWAT team began to feel the pressure. Rumors spread internally that higher authorities were reviewing the case, and some of the officers involved were anxious about potential disciplinary action. The veteran remained focused on the evidence, knowing that fear alone would not ensure accountability, but that the officer's unease was a sign that his strategy was working. Throughout this time, he maintained close contact with his lawyer, neighbors, and military friends. They coordinated every step, ensuring that all communications were documented and that no detail was overlooked. The veteran understood that discipline and thoroughness were crucial. Even a small error could undermine months of preparation and weaken the case. As the week progressed, the veteran also worked to strengthen his family's support network. Community leaders and civil rights advocates continued to offer guidance and reassurance. They provided advice on handling potential retaliation, suggested strategies for escalating complaints if necessary, and helped manage public attention. The veteran valued their counsel, but he remained the central figure guiding the strategy. His leadership and composure inspired confidence in everyone involved. At home, the veteran encouraged normal routines. He spent evenings helping his children with schoolwork, cooking meals with his wife, and creating an environment where the family could regain a sense of safety. Even amid a serious struggle for justice, he recognized the importance of emotional stability. His calm presence helped the family heal from the trauma of the Taser incident while remaining vigilant for the challenges ahead. He also began reviewing policies and regulations regarding SWAT operations. Understanding the rules and expectations allowed him to point out violations with authority. He contacted experts who could provide testimony on the appropriate use of force and the excessive aggression displayed by the officers. Each consultation strengthened his ability to challenge the misconduct effectively. By the end of the week, a clear pattern was emerging. The SWAT team's behavior was being scrutinized, internal investigations were underway, and public attention was growing. The veteran had successfully turned the tables on the officers, transforming a moment of fear into an organized, strategic push for accountability. He knew that this was only part of the battle, but he also knew that he had established a strong foundation for justice. The veteran reflected on the importance of patience and strategy. His initial reaction could have been anger or confrontation, but instead he had used calm, evidence-based action to take control of the situation. This approach not only protected his family, but also ensured that the officers could not dismiss or manipulate the incident. Every phone call, every email, every witness statement was a calculated step toward justice. As evening fell, the veteran sat with his wife and children once again. They had faced a terrifying ordeal, but they were no longer powerless. The veteran had shown them that courage was not just about physical strength. It was about planning, discipline, and standing firm in the face of injustice. His wife, though still recovering, felt reassured and proud. The children sensed the growing strength and determination in their home. In that quiet, secure moment, the veteran understood that the fight for accountability was far from over. The SWAT team had